Other people's children do not exist, is what people often say, but not everyone can truly feel that. To accept another's child as one's own, you need to be a person with a truly broad heart. This is why there are so many unloved, forgotten, abused, and traumatized children. Very often, mothers or fathers decide to pursue their own personal lives, forgetting that they are responsible not only for themselves. This happens more often than one would like. It's not surprising that vigilant neighbors sometimes start sounding the alarm faster than a news anchor can say good evening, especially in rural areas. The countryside is a completely different way of life where everyone knows everything about everyone else. No matter how hard you try, you can't hide your own dirty laundry. Amelia was even less fortunate. All her neighbors, as if by design, were elderly grandmothers well beyond a respectable age. The youngest of them was 67. Can you imagine how long her older comrades had been upholding the law and order in the neighborhood? But let's take it one step at a time. To the grandmothers, Amelia was simply Amelia, in short, Amelia. They witnessed her birth, watched her grow up, finish school, and so on. Can you picture the general idea? Instead of the usual 2 grandmothers, Amelia had around 10 of them. And without a doubt, she could say that the most annoying ones were the ones who remained. It's at times like these that you remember the saying that trouble never comes alone, and like seeks like. Grannies. Of course, they complain as soon as you see them about backaches, fluctuating blood pressure, and sudden heart palpitations. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Sometimes, it felt like the elderly platoon was only pretending to be on the brink of death just to avoid any suspicion that they planned to live another 100 years. And as if that weren't enough, Amelia had to stand out. How, you might ask? She got pregnant. In the countryside, pregnancy is harshly punished. All the gossip, judgments, everything will be directed at you. And no matter how much Amelia's mother tried to defend her, it was all in vain. Amelia, what's wrong with your Chloe? I told you, Chloe, your daughter will bring disgrace to you, and you didn't believe me. That's exactly what happened. Who asked you, you old hag? You should choose your words more carefully. After all, it's not my daughter who got pregnant by a married man. At that moment, Amelia's mother was getting angrier and angrier, and she might have even lashed out at the old women. That's how much they had angered her. She was one of those women who loved to argue. But even so, she loved her daughter more, so she could shut the old ladies up with a few strong words, and without them, it would have been unbearable. When Chloe's husband, Jake, Amelia's father, found out about what had happened, he was on the verge of killing his daughter right then and there. Chloe was terrified, and he had been drinking a bit, which didn't help. If it weren't for the nosy neighbors, they could have prepared the ground and gently told him when Jake was in a good mood, perhaps on payday, for example. But no, those meddling old ladies couldn't resist getting involved in this situation. What a bad habit to figuratively snoop under the neighbor's fence. Jake was calmly returning from work when suddenly he was hailed by Emily, the local informant. She swore and promised that she didn't hear or see a thing, but in reality, nothing got past her. Hey, Jake, come here, dear. Good evening, Mrs. Emily. How are you? Has your son sobered up? Jake didn't mean anything bad, he just asked out of habit. The old lady's face turned green, she pursed her lips, and then took a deep breath before saying, "Oh, Jake, you should watch over your Amelia like you watch over my Tyler, I swear." Jake waved her off. "I do watch over her. She's a good girl and a hard worker." "Ah, and not just at work, our little busy bee," the old lady said slyly. Jake raised an eyebrow in surprise. "What?" asked Mrs. Emily. Don't you know that your daughter will be bringing a little one into the world soon? Who told you such nonsense?" In response, Mrs. Emily just shook her head and nearly burst into tears. Poor Jake, it seemed he was the last to hear all the news. But how else could it be? They had to keep the shame hidden until the very end. That harlot had brought such disgrace to the family. Now they just had to sit back and endure it. "Did your wife, Chloe, not tell you anything?" Mrs. Emily asked. "Oh, how could this be? Grandma Emily let it slip, oh my." But there wasn't a hint of regret in the old lady's voice. "I'm going," Jake abruptly cut her off. "I need to go home." "Go on, Jake, our poor thing." The man quickly headed home, while the old woman continued to smirk after him. Was it only Tyler who got off scot-free with her? No, compared to Amelia, the professional flirt, he was a much purer soul. Jake burst into the house, causing a real scene that all the neighbors heard. Grandpa Ryan even rushed over once with a rifle, thinking that Jake had gotten so drunk he decided to settle things with his family. Jake pounced on him, and the poor grandpa was forced to retreat. But the daughter and Chloe didn't have that option. They had to listen to everything from start to finish. "It's all your fault." Jake swooped down on his unfortunate wife like a vulture. She was already on edge, and now they let all the dogs loose on her. "Jake, what did I do?" "Who told me, let her date that hunk of hers? He's an adult, respectable. And now it turns out he's married. And you." He shot a spiteful glance at Amelia. She sat there, huddled in a corner, which was not easy due to her large size. But now she looked like a little girl who couldn't defend herself. She was even afraid to look at her father. "Learn to spread your legs, huh? Is that what they teach you in your pedagogical studies, huh? How to properly lie down for a man. What did you hope for? That he would leave his family for you? Answer." Under the thunder of Jake's powerful bass voice, there was a dull thud, and Amelia screamed. Her father had hit the wall right above her head. This made him even more furious, and he literally scooped Amelia up. "Answer, you little brat. How could you sink so low? How dare you disgrace us in front of your mother and me?" "I didn't know," Amelia stammered. Tears flowed from her eyes, never ceasing, she stuttered, and her father's terrifying demeanor drained the last bit of strength from her. "I didn't know?" Jake shouted. "Listen to this, Mother, she didn't know, it turns out. Hopped into bed and couldn't be bothered to find out." Jake was mildly intoxicated when he came home and immediately grabbed a bottle. When his wife tried to talk to him, this darn scandal started. Alcohol fueled all the accusations, amplifying them tenfold. At that moment, Amelia just wanted to disappear, never to exist. She hadn't lied once. Lenya indeed didn't tell her he was married. And she didn't inquire either, that was true as well. But she thought that a married man wouldn't introduce himself to a girl, wouldn't try to invite her on a date, and wouldn't start courting her. What an utter idiot. When she mentioned her pregnancy, the child's father stated that he simply wouldn't sponsor every offspring she'd gotten, and he wished Amelia all the best and to disappear from his life. Amelia hoped that at least her parents would stand by her side and support her. Her mother was initially terrified, then got angry, and later forbade her from telling her father. And now, the result. Chloe, to her credit, tried to defend her daughter. She was afraid of her husband in this state as well. But she was still a mother, so she had to take the blow. "Don't you dare shout at her," Chloe whispered softly. Jake didn't even pay attention. He just kept shaking his daughter like a rag doll, yelling right in her face, spitting saliva in her eyes. That's when Chloe grabbed the first plate she could find and slammed it loudly against the floor. Shards flew in all directions, and Jake turned around, staring blankly at the source of the noise. I said, "Don't you dare shout at her. Maybe you should have raised your daughter like this." Jake started to escalate again. "What's the use of that?" Jake continued. "She embarrassed us in front of the whole village because of her. People will point fingers and gossip about us behind our backs because of her. And what, should I pat her on the head and bow down to her? Thank you, dearest daughter. Other children help with household chores and take care of their parents. And you hang your..." "Shut up!" Chloe practically roared, and another plate followed the first one, or the next one will fly into your head. I don't care what people will say about us. We'll raise her, that's what matters. Amelia understood how difficult those words had been for her mother and was immensely grateful. She would remember this feeling forever, the feeling that someone was willing to go against their principles and values for her, to step outside of themselves so she wouldn't be left alone. Jake, of course, didn't calm down then. Rather, he dimmed a little after his wife's threat, but he harbored a deep grudge against Amelia. Now he wouldn't talk to his daughter properly, trying to completely ignore her existence. And when Amelia found the strength to speak and ask for forgiveness, he harshly cut off all her attempts. "Dad, I really want to ask for your forgiveness," Amelia began softly, but her father's harsh look made her nerves tremble. "Dad? Who's Dad here?" The man sneered unpleasantly. "You must have mixed something up, kid. You don't have a dad." "But, Dad, I'm your daughter." "I am." "I don't have a daughter. She died recently." Could have at least offered condolences. Amelia burst into tears then, frightening her mother to death. Chloe was convinced they needed to go to the hospital, otherwise, her daughter would undoubtedly miscarry by morning, and the hysteria just wouldn't stop. Amelia couldn't calm down. Imagine how it would feel to hear such words from your own father. In the end, Chloe gave up on her own, woke up a bunch of neighbors, and eventually the man with the car was found. Grandpa Ryan, in general, was a compassionate person. While they were driving, he kept trying to tell stories. Sometimes he genuinely tried to comfort Allie, saying, "Amelia, sweetie, don't cry. Your father's a moron. What can you expect from such people? Don't cry, sunshine. You're going to be a mom, take care of your little one. Right?" But Amelia wasn't listening. They somehow managed to get to the hospital. The doctors left the girl overnight, prescribed a sedative, and started monitoring her. The following evening, Chloe and Grandpa Ryan came to pick her up. It turned out that there was no threat to the mother's and the baby's condition, but they couldn't go back home. Chloe spent the whole next day trying to come up with some solution. She realized that Jake was too conservative and intolerant and that he would drive their daughter to an early grave with his tantrums. So it was urgent to find a place for Amelia to stay, at least temporarily. A solution was found. Grandma, amusingly enough, on her father's side, turned out to be much more understanding than her son. Upon hearing the story from her future daughter-in-law, Grandma Ellie immediately declared that Amelia would live with her. "Is this convenient, Mrs. Sanchez?" Chloe inquired, although she hadn't considered this option herself for some reason. She likely thought that if her husband reacted this way, then his mother would certainly support him, not Amelia. "Oh, come on. Don't talk nonsense." Grandma Ellie waved it off. "Is it inconvenient for me to shelter my granddaughter? Bring her over soon. I have a room for her in perfect condition. And I'll give Jake a piece of my mind to make sure he doesn't dare to harm my granddaughter." Grandma likely gave Jake a piece of her mind, but Jake was as stubborn as a concrete wall. Therefore, Amelia's temporary stay with her grandmother eventually became permanent. To Amelia's relief, her grandmother turned out to be the most understanding person in the family. Her mother certainly supported her as no one else would. But deep down, Amelia knew that her mother didn't approve of what had happened, and Mrs. Sanchez was quite the opposite. As soon as her granddaughter arrived, Grandma had already prepared lunch. They discussed everything over tea. Amelia, openly and honestly, told her grandmother the whole truth about everything, and the old woman listened in silence, occasionally clucking her tongue in disapproval. "So, this is how it turned out, huh?" Grandma sighed. "What kind of a man is he? No good for himself or others. Ruined everything for that girl, and now he's probably found someone else. Such people should be locked up, Amelia. Do you think I mean, I don't think anything. I'm already old. And I can't think straight anymore." Grandma playfully winked. "I'll have a great-grandson or great-granddaughter soon. Why should I grieve? Dad said he doesn't have a daughter anymore, that I'm dead to him." Amelia felt a new lump forming in her throat. Grandma bustled around nearby. "Oh, hush, shush. I don't want to hear anything about that drunkard. Did you forget he was young once? What a disgrace. That's it, don't mention him in front of me. Do you hear what I'm saying? Or I'll give you a spoon on the forehead." Amelia smiled. Time passed, and Abigail was born, light-haired, light-eyed, with a laughter that resembled a real bell. Amelia didn't think children could laugh like that. From Grandma Ellie's, Amelia never left. She had thought about it for a long time. A really long time. But where could she go with a baby in her arms? She didn't even have a proper job, and if she found one, who would look after the child? So many things piled up, but Grandma Ellie didn't want to hear anything about leaving. "Is this your way of showing gratitude to your grandmother?" Grandma Ellie Sanchez asked with feigned offense. "Oh, Grandma, what are you talking about? I just don't want to burden you. And Abigail cries a lot, and her teething will start. As soon as they start, I'll help you. No departures. Is this sabotage? Knock it off." And Amelia knocked it off, to the point where she ended up living with her grandmother forever. Abigail grew up slowly, always under her mother's watchful eye, which allowed her to find stable work. Life settled down and regained its former colors. Unexpectedly for herself, Amelia, who had given up on her personal life, met Kyle. He was a little older than her, but significantly different from Abigail's biological father. Kyle was a computer programmer by education and knew his craft inside and out, down to the point where he could disassemble a computer physically, shake up its contents, and return it as good as new. He was also proficient in coding, which was his primary source of income. Ironically, the young couple met at a cafe. Kyle had come there for a meeting with a meticulous client who refused to sign a contract remotely. He had already suggested an electronic signature and even offered to pay for a courier to deliver the accursed paper to the client. Nothing satisfied him. The man had to step out of his comfort zone. This didn't happen more than once a year to deal with all the work-related issues. So that's where he met Amelia. She had come to meet a friend. It turned out that the friend was the wife of that meticulous client. And just like that, the two lines intersected, unexpectedly and without any common ground. Both of them were a bit embarrassed, but liked each other immediately. They started talking, and, having learned from bitter experience, Amelia asked if he was married. Kyle replied that he generally got along poorly with women. This reassured Amelia, meaning there wouldn't be any upset lady on the horizon. They began to talk and get to know each other. It was decided to go on a couple of dates. On the second date, Amelia, on edge and in a panic, spilled the truth about herself. She was a single mother, living with her grandmother, originally from a village, never been married, and had a 6-year-old daughter. She expected Kyle to find an excuse to avoid any further communication, but he simply shrugged. "So what if you're from a village? If things work out, I'll move you to the city. Having a daughter is also a good thing. 2 women in the house are better than 1, right?" "I think it makes sense," Kyle said. Amelia smiled. Kyle had a specific sense of humor, but he was sincere, and they decided to give it a shot. Why not? They weren't doing any harm to anyone. By that time, Grandma Ellie was already very ill, which increasingly worried Amelia. All the care for the old woman was on her shoulders, and her little daughter couldn't help it. So, quite soon, Amelia decided to take advantage of Kyle's kindness. It might not sound good, but in reality, she simply started asking for some small favors. "Kyle, can you help me bring groceries? I'm afraid I won't be able to do it alone. I'd have to make 3 trips. Kyle, could you please take my grandma to the city? I'll come with you. I'm just afraid she'll have a hard time on the bus, and none of the neighbors can help. Kyle, can you help us with the house? Our roof is leaking, and I can't replace the corrugated iron by myself." I tried. Kyle was so touched by the childlike absurdity of these requests that he never refused. And Grandma Ellie, as it turned out, was very happy to meet him. Amelia had no secrets from her grandmother, and unlike her mother, Grandma Ellie fully trusted her granddaughter. There were no moralizing comments like, "Are you absolutely sure he's not married? What if he turns out to be some kind of con artist? What does programmer mean? That's not a real job." No, Grandma Ellie genuinely celebrated her granddaughter's good fortune. "Well, you see, I told you there are good men in this world. For every girl, there's at least one good man. We're just silly sometimes. We notice it too late or cling to the wrong people," Grandma Ellie often said after that, reminiscing about her youth. But afterward, Grandma never tired of reminding her granddaughter to bring Kyle to visit soon. "We'll feed him, give him something to drink, and never let him go," Grandma Ellie declared. And that's exactly what happened. Kyle came one day and agreed to meet Grandma. After all, he had heard that she wanted to take a look at him. Upon close acquaintance, Grandma Ellie reminded Kyle of his late grandmother Lily, who had been one of the closest people to him. Therefore, an instant understanding was established between Kyle and Grandma Ellie. The same couldn't be said for Abigail. The girl was growing up feisty, with a rebellious spirit, constantly misbehaving. In reality, no more than other kids her age. But girls weren't supposed to be mischievous. She was a little rebel, to say the least. And she immediately pounced on Kyle with a barrage of questions. Imagine how comical it looks when a 6-year-old confronts an adult man. Kyle found it amusing, but Abigail saw nothing funny and only became more serious. "Why are you laughing, mister? I'm not joking with you," the little girl sternly declared. "I'm sorry, Abigail. I'm ready to answer all your questions," and Kyle raised his hands in a disarmingly gesture. "Then answer me directly and honestly, what are your intentions with my mom?" "The most serious ones possible," Kyle replied sincerely. "And I have serious intentions for you as well." Amelia, who had her back to them, smiled. She was washing the dishes and eavesdropping on their very adult conversation. "Hey, don't even think about having intentions towards me. I'll tell Grandma." Unexpectedly for everyone, Abigail screamed and rushed into another room. Kyle stared at Amelia, bewildered, and she chuckled quietly, spreading her hands apart. Well, I guess you can consider the first meeting a success. And who does she take after? Grandma? Kyle replied with feigned grumbling, approaching the girl and hugging her around the waist. Believe it or not, she takes after our great-grandma. They both laughed, even though it seemed from the outside that Abigail had indeed taken a liking to Kyle. Maybe she didn't envision this kind of father, but they immediately formed a somewhat trusting relationship. It happens when you see someone and realize that you could be good friends. However, she didn't stop teasing Kyle. Both of them enjoyed this strange game where Abigail pretended to examine Kyle to see if he was worthy of her mother. They often argued, but in a playful manner. Overall, the girl was happy when the man visited with her mother. However, as you may recall, Amelia had earned a less than stellar reputation in the village. The village, in general, is a close-knit community that rarely forgives mistakes. You can only make mistakes within certain limits. For instance, a man can get so drunk that he sees green demons. There have been cases when the drunken ones grabbed knives. The community, represented by the ever-watchful grandmothers, would justify such actions. Have you heard what Chris did? They would talk about it from time to time. Well, it serves Emma right. She's to blame for driving her husband to it, the Council of Grandmothers would uncompromisingly declare, and everyone else started believing that Emma was some kind of bad wife. She's lucky he didn't beat her more. He was gentle with her. Now imagine when a man started visiting Amelia. The first time, perhaps, it was a coincidence, the second time a pattern, and by the third time, it was becoming suspicious. Rumors began to spread cautiously through the village, initially uncertain. Amelia seems to have found herself a cavalier, were the first, slightly less authoritative remarks. Then came the somewhat more credible ones. Yes, I know this man. I've seen him more than once. Finally, there were the malicious gossips. Oh, she's always bringing these men over. What can you expect from a girl who partied her youth away at 19? Shame and disgrace. Not content with one in her skirts, now she's bringing another. Just wait, she'll probably throw herself at Jake and Chloe or even her own grandmother. Oh, the saintly woman, Ella, taking such a viper into her bosom. What has she done to deserve such torment? Ella had no idea that she was so poor and unhappy. But the rumors were spreading, and everyone else was convinced that her wayward granddaughter and her lover had decided to fleece the poor old lady. They took advantage of not working, living off her pension. It was shameful. And as for the fact that Amelia went to the city every day, it was not for work. She was chasing after men, spreading her legs. Finally, some foolish Alphonse had taken the bait. He probably didn't work either because, in the villagers' understanding, there was no such thing as a job with a flexible schedule. They even kept a child in wedlock, and little Abigail was suffering right away. God forbid the great-grandmother would die, the girl would be unwanted by anyone, and she'd end up in an orphanage for sure. If Amelia and her grandmother knew how interesting their life appeared to others, they would laugh for a very long time. But neighbors always had a clearer view, and people like them would find evidence to support their words. So, one unfortunate morning, Emily's grandmother was walking through the village when she suddenly heard a sound she couldn't quite comprehend. It was the barking of a dog. Could it be that Amelia had brought a dog with her? But they didn't own any dogs. The vigilant old lady decided to investigate the situation. She cautiously made her way to the fence and peeked over it. What she saw was beyond belief, not in a fairy tale or words. Another, technically the only one, but as far as Emily's grandmother was concerned, the fifth lover in a month was chasing little Abigail around the yard. And she was barking in response, like a puppy. "You scoundrel!" Emily's grandmother yelled and began to bang on the fence. "Get away from the child!" "Grandma, we're just playing." Abigail started to explain. But the old lady wasn't particularly interested. Apparently, she was trying to storm the gate. Can you imagine making a child bark like a dog? You'd put her on a leash if you could, you scoundrel. Kyle blurted out without thinking. And that's exactly what the old lady wanted. She became so furious and enlarged in size that she almost broke the fence. "Who are you saying such things to, you wretch? Monster! Good people, he's torturing the child." Amelia rushed over upon hearing the cries, pushed the grandmother out of the yard, and managed to keep her from entering. Naturally, the guest was less than thrilled and carried fresh gossip through the village. "What was that, Kyle?" Amelia asked. "Honestly, I didn't understand it myself. Grandma Emily just thought that I barked very convincingly," Abigail declared. Everyone laughed, but no one imagined that, at some point, it would be genuinely useful. Night had fallen. Amelia and Kyle hadn't spent the night in the village for a long time. It was because Chloe, Amelia's mother, had suffered a seizure, and the young couple had rushed to the city with her in the middle of the night. They decided that to avoid dragging the child to different hospitals, Abigail would stay with her great-grandmother. At that time, Ellie wasn't feeling very well, but she wasn't bedridden. When asked if she could stay alone with Abigail, the pensioner would dodge the question. "Yes, go ahead, Amelia. What's one night without us going to change?" Ellie said. If only she had known at that moment. Amelia and Kyle left, and Grandma Ellie fed the child dinner and went to sleep. However, Abigail couldn't sleep for a long time. It was due to the strange sounds coming from outside, some scraping noises, footsteps. She was very scared, but under her care, as she herself said, was her elderly great-grandmother who needed support and protection. So Abigail decided to check what was happening but was afraid to go far from the house. She carefully squeezed through the door and listened. In general, there was the usual summer silence, occasionally interrupted by some strange sounds. Abigail listened for a long time, and then, for a moment, she thought that voices were mixed in with the sounds. Without much thought, the girl opened the door wide and let out a loud bark. She found it amusing at the time. Abigail later confessed that she had decided to overcome her fear this way. Because if you do something silly, you instantly stop being afraid. And it really helped. As soon as her loud barking ceased, all the sounds around her immediately stopped. The satisfied girl went to sleep. Amelia and Kyle returned quite early. Chloe had to be left in the hospital. Everything turned out to be more serious than they had thought. Both of them were incredibly tired, and Abigail ran to meet them. "Mom, Uncle Kyle, hi." "Hi, little one," Amelia replied with a heavy sigh. "So, how did you guys manage without us overnight?" "It was fine," Abigail cheerfully declared. "I scared off the criminals, and Grandma slept like a baby." "Criminals? What criminals?" her mother asked, confused. "Well, there were some people near our fence. So I barked at them. And there was no more noise." "You're quite the little storyteller, aren't you?" Amelia smiled and picked her daughter up. A little later, Kyle entered the kitchen. Amelia was already preparing lunch, but she couldn't help noticing his rather concentrated expression. "Kyle, are you okay?" Amelia asked, taking a seat across from him at the table. "You look preoccupied. Are you so tired?" maybe you should take a nap? Well, you see, Amelia, the man replied thoughtfully, Abigail mentioned something about criminals, right? So, I went around the fence. There were footprints in the place where our boards are missing. People usually don't walk there. A spoon slipped from Amelia's hand, and the kitchen fell silent. Kyle repaired the hole in the fence the same day, and no one ever found out what had happened that night. Perhaps, if it weren't for their silly games, it could have ended in a disaster. Not every stranger's child can become your own. Often, parents forget about their children in their attempts to build their own lives, but Amelia's family was not that case. Among the neighbors, rumors circulated for a long time about how they tortured and made the poor child bark like a dog.